Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So, over the weekend, Disney held its biannual D23 event. And today, I'm going to be diving into my thoughts and initial reactions on some of the main announcements that were made during the entertainment panel. I believe that took place on Friday/Saturday, and they announced a whole bunch of stuff across the Disney empire. So we are going to be diving into the main announcements from that panel. I'm going to share what I'm excited about, what I'm disappointed by, and also I'm going to touch on some of the hot topics that I have seen around social media as of late, especially to do with Disney sequels. Ooh, so if that sounds fun to you, then stay tuned. And as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, guys, let's get into this. So I'm going to be diving into all of the announcements and previews and trailers and images that Disney released a few days ago as part of the entertainment panel. And I'm going to be splitting this up into the different Disney verticals across their entertainment empire. Starting off with, yes, you guessed it, the Marvel panel, where we got a whole bunch of goodies. So I'm going to do this in order of projects that I'm most excited by. And for me, the project that came out on top out of this D23 panel was Ironheart. Oh, Ironheart, guys, I am so excited. Yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. Now you might be thinking, Jean, you obviously have your biases, like you're obviously biased. Of course, you're excited to see the black female superhero get her own show, to which I would say you're correct. You're absolutely correct. But listen. I already loved Dominique Thorpe's Ironheart in Black Panther 2. I was already really excited to see the character before I even saw a lick of footage from the Ironheart series. And this series has been plagued, much like many other projects post Phase 4, with all sorts of delays, all sorts of reshoots that have been needed. And this series was in fact supposed to come out, I believe, either last year or this year, but it's now been delayed to 2025. And so I was really nervous. I was like, listen, is this even going to work out? Is it even going to happen? Is it going to be cancelled and written off for a tax write-off? Like, what is going to happen to this goddamn show? But a few days ago, as part of their panel, Marvel Studios finally revealed a trailer for the series, and I did see someone who filmed it, okay, shakily and enthusiastically. I did get a chance to see the trailer on Twitter, and I have to say, it looks good. I have to say, it looks really, really strong. I'm really excited to see what they do with this character. I love the angle of her being a university student at MIT, someone who is a recipient to Tony Stark's schemes, the scheme that he revealed in Captain America Civil War. Yeah, she is a part of that collegiate. So I'm really excited to see how that plays into things, how he kind of inspired her in her work. But also there's like a moral ambiguity to the character. She's getting involved with Anthony Ramos for some kind of reason. And after I've watched Twisters, I know that that's not always a good thing, okay? So this all looks very intriguing. I have heard, of course, the rumors about the casting of certain characters who we thought we were going to pop up much earlier in the Marvel phases, but we might be seeing now. No spoilers here. But all in all, just taking a look at the footage for Ironheart really made me very happy and very excited for the project. Hopefully all of the reshoots and retooling and switching things up help to the project, and ultimately the project will come out on top, not just for the sake of representation, although that means the world to me as well, of course, but also because Marvel needs a few wins. Like, they need a few wins that aren't Deadpool related. And so far from what I've seen, it looks like Ironheart stands with a good chance. And I'm blocking out the naysayers, I'm blocking out the racists, the misogynists. Please. I don't want to hear it. There's no space for that nonsense here. We're going to be judging the show based off of its quality, based off of its writing, and all of that good stuff. We don't want to entertain the other nonsense that has plagued this fandom. Okay, so next up in my rankings of projects that I'm most excited about out of the Marvel panel, I would say I would say Thunderbolts. You know, I don't think we got a lot out of Thunderbolts. We got a couple of, you know, looks at Florence Pugh. But, you know, judging off of social media, I think there wasn't a ton of new content that was released about Thunderbolts. Correct me if I'm mistaken. Maybe I just missed it because there was a flurry of content going around. But overall, I am more excited about Thunderbolts than I am about some of these other Marvel projects to begin with. This is essentially Marvel's Suicide Squad, right? Like, I think we can all concur that that's basically what's happening here. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, especially with Florence Pugh and Sebastian Stan. It's my understanding that it'll actually be Florence Pugh's Yelena, the new Black Widow, who will be leading the team. And even though I am a huge proponent, of course, of greater female representation, and I want to see these female characters take positions of leadership, always, okay, make no mistake. However, in this instance, I do think that it is a little bit odd that the most experienced and the most long-running Marvel character, right? Like, we were literally introduced to him 13 years ago. It does strike me as a bit odd that Captain America's right-hand man, both caps mind you, is not leading this team. Perhaps it's a co-lead situation, I'm not sure, but it does strike me as a little bit weird that Yelena is jumping straight into being the team leader. I think it's important to show that these positions are like earned and make sense in the context of the universe and the team, and I'm sure the film will address it. I'm sure there'll be a good explanation, but I hope it's not just because she's the new big thing in Hollywood and the MCU, and so they're thrusting her into a position of power automatically. I hope it is the case where story-wise it does make sense for why Bucky Barnes is not leading the Thunderbolts team, because that would be my natural choice. And I think it would make sense just in terms of all of the different teams in the MCU, right? Because you have Sam Wilson, who was chosen by Steve Rogers to be Captain America. He has the shield, and so of course it makes sense for Bucky to be the leader of the Thunderbolts. Like, to me, that jives together, especially because they're splitting up the two, so it needs to be worthwhile. So I'm really interested to see what they do with the team dynamic, and also what they do with the individual power sets, because there are a lot of members of the team that are kind of similar to Captain America himself, you know, with the super soldier serum and all of that. So I want to see diversity in the power sets and in the personalities, right? Like, I want to see clashing personalities. I want to see people with dark, twisted histories coming together to bond, right? I mean, you have plenty of that with Yelena and Bucky alone, but I'm looking for a Guardians/Suicide Squad type team dynamic, and I'm interested to see what they come up with for the Thunderbolts. So that's why that's number 2 on my list of most exciting Marvel Studios projects. Then at number 3, I guess I would throw in Cap 4. I think Cap 4 would come in at number 3. We did get the first trailer for the film that wasn't released officially, but people filmed it from the panel, and it looks decent to me. Like, it looks solid. I don't know what it is, but I kind of know what it is. It might be the political situation in the real world today that's making me less excited for Cap 4 than I would have been just like a couple of years ago. There's something about 2024 where I'm like, I don't want to see this American imperialism right now. Like, I'm really not interested. And people have been, you know, throwing this analysis and criticism at Marvel for a while now. The fact that a lot of these heroes symbolize, you know, keeping the status quo, and particularly Captain America as a concept is a symbol of American imperialism. Like, that critique has been around for a while, and justifiably so. But it was kind of like easier to ignore, or like easier to overlook in previous times, whereas now it's just like so there that it kind of tainted my excitement for this project overall. That and some other interesting choices and the inclusion of interesting characters has made me less excited for the project overall. But I was, of course, really intrigued and excited by Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford joining the MCU seemingly pretty into it. Like, he's actually really excited. People have made the joke that if there's one thing that Harrison Ford will not be excited by, it's Star Wars. But everything else, everything else he seems to be down for, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, he seems to be a pretty good addition to the Marvel family, and his Red Hulk is quite ferocious, quite impressive. To me, I've never been like the biggest fan of the Hulk. I find that the Hulks work better in the context of like a bigger team or like a bigger story. So I've never been one to shout out for a solo Hulk movie. I think the way that the Hulk was used in Thor Ragnarok, for instance, was just like perfect. And so here, you know, seeing Red Hulk within a Cap movie makes sense to me. I'm excited for that to be an aspect of the movie rather than the whole storyline. But it's looking to be a really interesting story. Just some details coming out of D23. Apparently that Celestial, remember that Celestial that came out of the Eternals? Yeah, it's going to be mined for adamantium. Oh, we've heard those terms before. Yes, that is of course the material that makes up Wolverine's exoskeleton, including his claws. So they're going to be mining the hell out of that, and I'm sure there'll be some X-Men nods here and there related to that. But that's where the president's kind of stance lies. And in the trailer, it was also revealed that the president wants to reassemble the Avengers, to which Sam's like, bruh, are you joking? Are you joking? Like, General Ross, you're the one that dissembled them. You're the one that put up the Sokovia Accords and was like, no, you can't be doing your Avengering anymore. And Sam's like, what changed? Like, what's the difference? And the president, okay, President Harrison Ford is like, well, you guys saved half the world. So like, we literally owe you a debt. Like, water under the bridge. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. To which Sam says, okay, cool, but what happens if we disagree? What happens if we're not in alignment? And that there is the tension of the story. So that sounds good to me. It sounds really interesting, but I am a bit worried about them dipping into that American imperialism. They need to be careful about that. But aside from all of that, my biggest reservation about Cap 4 is the fact that Bucky won't be in it. I think that is a huge, colossal mistake. I know that they have the power of Harrison Ford to balance the scales a little bit, especially for those who are reserved or anxious about Sam being Captain America. I mean, wouldn't you want to see Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk, right? They're kind of dangling that carrot for you. So that's all well and good, but I do think that it was a big mistake for them to oust Bucky from the Cap franchise, because he and Sam are just so amazing together on screen. They really carried a lot of the plot holes and issues that Falcon the Winter Soldier series had, and so I'm heartbroken that they're going to be splitting up, especially because they ended the series on such a good note as a great team together. The fact that they're going to be split up for this movie is a really big shame, but hopefully we'll get like a little cameo. Maybe Sebastian Stan had time to just dip in on set just a little bit. They're all in Atlanta, right? They're all in Atlanta. Maybe he had time to just dip in for 2 seconds. I don't know. But it would be a big shame if we didn't have Bucky or even Zemo, because I think they are staples of this world at this point. Okay, so enough about Cap 4. We also got a sneak peek into the Fantastic Four. I've already talked about my thoughts on the Fantastic Four in my unpopular opinions video, which I posted earlier this year. If you want to hear more, then go ahead and check out that video. But in it, I explained that I do not think that the Fantastic Four are going to save the MCU. Like, I don't think that they're actually going to do as much as some may have hoped for them, and I'm not terribly excited for the Fantastic Four, if I'm being honest. I think it's a bit strange that people are overlooking the fact that we've had 2 live action iterations of this franchise and story that have not worked out, that have literally been colossal flops. Like, why would you get excited about the third? What do you think is going to change? I don't know. I mean, obviously Marvel Studios has built up a lot of goodwill over the decades at this point, but I'm still a little bit nervous and anxious about the Fantastic Four, because to me, the best Fantastic Four that has and will ever exist was made by Pixar. It's The Incredibles. More on that later. But in the meantime, of course I'll be there. Of course I'll be there opening night. Like, don't be ridiculous. I'm a Marvel fan, okay? But it's not the project that I'm most excited for. So that's why it comes under Cap And then last on this ranking out of the Marvel panel, we have Agatha All Along. Now that's not great because that's the project that's coming the soonest. It's actually being released, I believe it's October/November 2024, so right around the corner. And they even had the live performance of the famous song from WandaVision, which this series is named after, even though it didn't really make sense because it wasn't Agatha All Along, it was Wanda All Along. But anyways, but the reason why I'm not terribly excited for this series is, first of all, I just think that WandaVision was so long ago. They took way too long to capitalize on the fame and success that Agatha got out of that series. They're trying to bring it back to life now, but I just think it falls a little bit flat and it's not kind of hot off the presses the way that it would have been if they managed to pump this out in 2022, or at the very least 2023, which was when this was originally supposed to come out. So that's not great. It feels like it's a little bit too little too late. Second thing is, I think the drop has been chaotic and nonsensical. They've had several name changes for this series, and they did that thing where they tried to make it look intentional. They were like, ooh, it was Agatha All Along. But originally it was called like Agatha the Darkhold series, Agatha, you know, purple is the new black, like Agatha, like it's had all of these different names. And then in the end they were like, oh, it was Agatha playing with the title cards for the show. Like, that makes no sense. And I know that people fell for it. They were like, oh, it's so clever, it's so genius, because Agatha was like making it up all along. But I'm like, nah. I think the other names were the PR team or the marketing team testing things out on the audience, and when it didn't really get a lot of, you know, excitement, or it didn't garner a lot of engagement, they decided to go with their plan B or C or D or E. And that was Agatha All Along. I think that's what really happened behind the scenes, but they played it well. Like, they made it look like it was intentional, and it fooled a lot of people, but not me. Not me, because I'm always I'm always looking out for these things, okay? I'm too cynical to believe it. Now, aside from the timing and the name, I'm also not terribly excited for this series based off of the footage that we've seen so far. They did release a trailer for the show, which unfortunately, I have to agree with many when they said it was giving CW circa 2011. Like, it was giving, I'm sorry, but it was very much giving season 1 of the Vampire Diaries, like that kind of situation. Maybe even less than that, honestly, because at least the Vampire Diaries had that like edginess where us baby teenagers / preteens were getting into more adult content, and so we felt really excited about watching the Vampire Diaries and Teen Wolf and MTV's Awkward. Like, that was the gateway. That was the gateway into adult content, right? Whereas, you know, Agatha All Along doesn't even have that distinction because it's a Disney Plus series and not the kind of cool kind of Disney Plus series. Which reminds me, oh my goodness, I forgot the actual series that I'm most excited about. We'll circle back in a second. Anyways, I can't believe I forgot that. I forgot to list it on my list. But yeah, Agatha All Along doesn't even have that kind of spiciness to it that the Vampire Diaries did. And so it's not, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm a little bit anxious, you know, like I don't know if this is going to hit the way that it needs to. It really needs to not pull any punches and just be really dark and sinister and gruesome and evil. Really lean into the magic, really lean into the twistedness of it all. And yes, I did see that on the poster it says from the twisted minds of WandaVision, but I'm gonna need them to put the proof in the pudding, because so far what I've seen is about as twisted as a Disney Channel Halloween special. Okay. Rewinding back, let's go back a little bit because I completely forgot. My mistake. I did not write it on my list. The actual show, the number one of the panel, okay, I'll write down the list here somewhere. The number one of the Marvel panel by far is Daredevil Born Again. Yes, we got a trailer. I did spy the trailer off of Twitter and it looks good. What can I say? It looks immaculate. It looks exactly what we needed, what we wanted from the series. They have, you know, extended the episodes and cut back the episodes. They changed the cast. They wanted to bring new people in and get rid of Karen and Foggy and do all of this. But ultimately, just as Thanos said, ultimately, where did it lead them? right back to the Netflix show, right back to the Netflix format, which actually sucks because, as many have speculated, allegedly, okay, the whole reason why Marvel Studios changed the name of the series to Daredevil Born Again is because they were playing a card out of one of Disney's tricks where they changed the name of a show after about 3 seasons, so they no longer have to pay residuals to the writers and creators of the original 3 seasons of the show. So instead of just paying the writers of the first 3 seasons of Daredevil, the Netflix series, and just continuing on with the brilliant storyline that they've set up from season 3 over at Netflix, no, instead they decided to evade that as much as they could. They twisted things and turned things and changed things around, extended, retracted, you know, got rid of characters, doing all of that, when ultimately they ended up right back to square one pretty much with just a couple of changes. And it's like, all of that, really? All of that, so you didn't have to pay a couple of extra thousands of dollars? Like, that's just embarrassing. So whilst I am really excited for Daredevil Born Again, and I think it looks really great judging from the trailer that we got, which I only skimmed through because I don't want to be spoiled, okay? So that's all well and good, but I do think it's a shame that Disney didn't just, you know, rehire the team that made the first 3 seasons of the show so brilliant and did such a good job over at Netflix to continue on the Daredevil series over in Disney Plus. Like, that's really, really annoying and frustrating, and all of that to have like bare minimum differences to the original Netflix series. Like, how embarrassing for you. But let's talk about some of the storylines that were divulged from the trailer and from Disney's presentation. First of all, we have the return of Foggy, Karen, but most importantly, Jon Bernthal's The Punisher. Jon Bernthal's The Punisher has made a successful entry into the MCU proper, and I love to see it. That's all good stuff. That's all good stuff. It's almost as exciting as Charlie Cox returning, of course, because he was so brilliant as the Punisher in the Netflix series, and so it's great. It's great to see him on board in this show. I'm really excited to see how the two will interact in the new series. Then, of course, we have the return of Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, who had an amazing outing over in Echo, the Echo series, where they set up his character really well. He's going to be running for mayor, so that's an exciting storyline for this hardened criminal. But new details emerged saying that he will actually be forced to work together with Daredevil. I thought they were going to be rivals the whole time, but no, it turns out that there is going to be an element of them having to work together to defeat a greater evil in the form of Muse, who is a new comic book character. And we did get a look at the character. He looks really creepy, really horrible and disgusting and scary. All good stuff. All stuff that we want to see from a Daredevil series. Like, it looks like they're going in the right direction. So it'll be really interesting to see Daredevil and Kingpin working together in this series to fight off this greater evil, although I'm sure they will end up fighting against each other either in the beginning, the middle, or the end at some point. So yes, to correct myself earlier, as excited as I am for Ironheart, Daredevil Born Again is absolutely the series that I'm most excited about coming out of this D23 presentation. Okay, so that's it for the Marvel panel. Now moving on to another corner of the Disney empire, and that is Pixar. Pixar had quite a few exciting announcements to make for their presentation, and I'm not really going to be ranking these announcements because for a lot of them there's like very little information that is available right now. I mean, animation takes forever to create, so they mostly just announced like projects that were going to be happening eventually, and there were quite a few sequels in here. And the topic of sequels is something that I've been meaning to dive into, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to do so, considering all of the sequels that were announced during Pixar and Disney Animation's presentations, because I've seen this topic be talked about on social media for months now, and also years, to be honest, and I have a bit of a hot take. Like, I need to get some things off of my chest. I want to be dead ass. I want to be so serious with you guys, because I think people are being ludicrous. Like, I think some, quote, cinephiles are being ludicrous and crazy and unreasonable, okay, and not in the Bob Iger sense when we're talking about strikes, but actually unreasonable when it comes to their treatment or attitudes towards these studios. Because the audacity for people to open their mouths or take out their thumbs to type out that Pixar lacks originality, that Pixar hasn't produced any original films over the last few years, that they've run out of ideas, that all they can do is produce sequels. Disney, all it does is produce sequels. Like, all it cares about is sequels. No. They've run out of ideas. They're so unoriginal, unimaginative. Are you serious? Are you literally serious? Be so for real right now. All it takes is a quick Google to check out Disney Animation and Pixar's recent releases, and you'll see how ridiculous you sound. Because let me just list these out right now. We have Elemental, just from last year. You have Luca, Soul, Turning Red, and then over in Disney Animation, Wish, Encanto, Elio from Pixar coming out just next year, although it was supposed to come out this year. And then you have Strange World from Disney as well. All of these original films. None of these have a number as a suffix. Like, these are all original movies that what? You didn't watch. You simply did not watch these films, and now you have the audacity to be like, oh, Disney's so unoriginal, it doesn't make any original films anymore. Like, are you serious? And this is why I cannot take these people seriously. I cannot take these people seriously because all it takes is a quick Google search to see their recent releases, and you'll see just how insane that prospect is. And that's not even taking into account the fact that when these sequels were announced, they ended up getting the most views, the most engagement, the most likes, the most everything, the most attention out of all of the announcements that were presented during the panels. So, like, the hypocrisy is out of this world. I'm sick and tired of hearing people saying that Disney and Hollywood at large doesn't have any originality, you know, it doesn't have any new ideas to explore, it's run out of ideas, it's so dead and boring and blah, 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 blah. Because every time Disney or any of these Hollywood studios so much as announce a sequel or a remake or a reboot to your favorite movie or franchise, you all get excited, you all lose your nerve. You're all watching and liking and commenting and engaging with it, whereas the new original ideas have to work so much harder to get to the surface, to get a lick of some of that sunlight. So please spare me, literally spare me, because it's so hypocritical and so disingenuous at this point. I mean, the box office literally doesn't lie. Do you know how long it took for Elemental to build up a natural audience and to eventually get some semblance of box office money last year? It took forever, and it managed to take home about 500 or 600 million, but that was a slow burn. Whereas here you have Inside Out, Inside Out 2 becoming the highest grossing animated film of all time in the space of like a fortnight, and that surpassed a previous sequel in Frozen 2. So like, I really don't want to hear it. I really do not want to hear there's Disney lacks originality, because the way that Inside Out 2 made more money than all of these other original films combined, like, what do you expect the studio to do actually? And you know what annoyed me even more? Sorry to harp on about this, but this is why we're sitting here today, okay? What annoyed me even more is the fact that people had the audacity to clap back at this, you know, very real assessment of the situation and say that, oh, the reason why no one watched the original films is because they look dead. It's because they were bad, or they don't look interesting. Like, Pixar announced Hoppers and Elio, as I said, and people were like, oh, that looks dead. So like, of course we're not excited for it. Guys, what are you talking? What are you talking? This is Pixar. Surely the name of the studio itself should give you some semblance of confidence that something good will come out of it. I mean, sure, they don't have a 100% track record anymore, with Lightyear being poorly received. And they've also had some stumbles with sequels, mind you, with Finding Dory, and, you know, Cars 2 was a bit iffy. Like, of course, there have been some misses in their repertoire, but overall, by and large, Pixar has been consistently brilliant with their output. So the idea that people wouldn't be excited about the latest Pixar project simply because it is an original film that doesn't look great in their eyes is just like, nah, spare me. Just say that you're excited for Toy Story 5 and be done with it. Like, just say that you only go to the cinema once every year and you're only gonna be turning up for Incredibles 3 and be done with it. Okay, so now that I've had my rant and I've really like worked up a sweat, it is boiling in here, by the way. Like, I'm not wearing the right top for this weather. But now let's dive into some of these releases real quick. Like I said, it's not going to be in order. But first up, we have Elio, which, like I said, has been moved from 2024 all the way over to 2025. And this film is centered on this kid who gets abducted by aliens, I believe, and then is mistakenly identified as the representative of Earth. And so hijinks ensue. I think that's a really great premise. That sounds really interesting to me. And just in general, I don't tend to follow Pixar movies in the development stage. I tend to just show up, you know, wherever they tell me to go, I'm there. Like, I just show up in the cinema and watch it. I don't need to know much about it. All I know is that I can expect to have a really damn good time with a Pixar movie because that's just the kind of studio that they are. And similarly, we have Hoppers, which looks like a treat. This is a movie centered on beavers, and someone who's going to be voiced by John Hamm is gonna want to get rid of all the beavers. There's a lady who I think thinks that she's a beaver or she becomes a beaver. Something crazy is going on with beavers. Something crazy is going on with beavers, but that's the new movie that they announced during the panel, which again sounds fun. Like, I'll be there. Like, I'll be there in opening weekend. Absolutely. And then we have a couple of Disney Plus shows that are going to be coming from Pixar, starting us off with Dream Productions, which is an Inside Out spin-off that will be set in between the first film and the second. And this is centered on the Dream Studio that we've been introduced to in the franchise that's taking place in Riley's mind. And we got a deeper dive into the Dream Studio in, I think it was the second Inside Out. I watched them close together, so they're kind of blending together. But there was a whole scene that took place, I think it was in the first one, with a director who was trying to like reimagine a scene that had happened in Riley's real life, but kind of imbue it into her dreams. So that, you know, concept is really fun and interesting, and they're going to make a whole series out of that. And then you also have Win or Lose, which is going to be a series about softball. So again, that sounds fun, depending on the target audience, like whether it skews really young or if it's more of like a universal series that anyone could enjoy. I will definitely be tuned in, because the one Pixar movie that I haven't found myself going back to ever is The Good Dinosaur, which skewed very, very young. And then when we reverse back to the sequels, Toy Story 5, I agree with everyone when they say that Toy Story did not need to go past 3. Like, it really did not, and it kind of boggles my mind that they even made a 4th Toy Story, let alone a 5th one. Didn't Woody leave the gang? Like, Woody has literally left the gang. Like, I don't know what else there is to say about this goddamn franchise and these toys. But apparently the angle that they're taking with Toy Story 5 is that it's a war on iPad kids. And honestly, absolutely. Honestly, it's a war on Generation Alpha that's been raised by iPads. The toys are contending with electronical devices. And honestly, I think that is a very interesting angle. Not gonna lie. I do think that, you know, the dynamic of toys going up against iPads, going up against devices, is intriguing. And if there is any studio who could make this intriguing and thought-provoking and a little bit deep, whilst also being entertaining, I mean, it would be Pixar, right? Like, it would be Pixar who could pull this off. So fine, I'll definitely be tuned in. I'm not overly excited for it. I did see Toy Story 4. In fact, I think I have a very old review of it. But at this point, I don't remember a single thing about that film. I never watched it again. I never circled back. So to me, like I said, I think Toy Story could have ended with the 3rd one, which was just a masterpiece. But Toy Story 4 made over $1 billion. So of course, Disney and Pixar are going to revisit the franchise and milk it dry. And similarly with Incredibles 3. Similarly with Incredibles 3, pretty much exact same thing that I said about Toy Story 4 applies to Incredibles 2. I did watch it. I don't have a review of it, but I barely remember that sequel. But the first film is honestly one of my favorite films of all time. The first Incredibles movie is faultless. It is perfection. And I even have a very old video ranking my top 10 Pixar movies, and spoiler alert, The Incredibles comes out very, very high on that list. So I love The Incredibles franchise. I think I'm far more attached to this franchise than I am Toy Story. I love The Incredibles franchise. I love the Parr family. And so even though I was a little bit disappointed by the second one, I will definitely be tuning in for the third, and I am substantially more excited for the third Incredibles movie than I am for the fifth Toy Story one. Okay, so the next verticals to explore are Disney proper, starting us off with Disney animation, where, as I said, they announced more sequels in the form of Frozen 3 and Zootopia / Zootropolis here in the UK, number 2. Now let's get Frozen out of the way real quick. We did get a look at the concept design for Frozen 3. I keep thinking it's Frozen 2, but no, we already had a second one. More on that in a second. But first off, I think people think that Frozen 3 is going to be 2D based off of that concept design. I don't know if y'all think this or if it was just one person who said this and everyone kind of rolled with it, but I highly doubt that Frozen 3 is going to be 2D animation. Like, there's pretty much no chance. It's going to be 3D animation. It's just that this is like a concept design and artwork, which, you know, animated studios always do, regardless of if it's 2D or 3D. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be 3D. From the looks of things, it looked, you know, very beautiful. It was just a still image of Elsa and I think Anna on horses or something like that. It looked really nice, really pretty, but not like substantially different from what we saw, especially in the second movie. So like, we don't have much to go off of at this point. But speaking of the second movie, I did watch it on pretty much opening day or opening weekend, even though I'm not like the biggest Frozen fan, but I have come to really appreciate that film over the years, especially in light of some lesser films that have come subsequently, and so I do really enjoy the first Frozen movie. I just think that that song, dare I say the name, that song propelled it to like stardom and a level that had hitherto never seen before. But yeah, Frozen is definitely a strong one, and I did enjoy the first film, but the second film, much like many of these other sequels, just kind of washed right over me. Cannot remember what happened for the life of me. I do think Into the Unknown, the featured song in Frozen 2, was a banger. Okay, it was a really good song, one that I played a lot more than the original one, but it wasn't thrown into the stratosphere the way that the original one was. However, Frozen 2 did end up making a ton of money, and like I said, it was the highest grossing animated film before Inside Out 2 usurped it, and so I do think there is good cause for this third film. It makes sense, but honestly, I'm not overly excited for it because the second film was just like so forgettable for me. But for the kids that really adore the Frozen franchise, I'm happy for them. Like, I'm never one to try and withhold joy and love and excitement from these kids for these franchises. Let these kids enjoy stuff, okay? Let them enjoy this stuff. Now, the next sequel up that we've got is Zootopia 2. And all I can say about this one is it's about time. It's about goddamn time. One of the mysteries of life, and by life I mean Disney, one of the mysteries of Disney, Walt Disney Studios, is how it has failed to capitalize on some of the biggest bangers that they have released over the last few decades. Why is it that we don't have more of Treasure Planet, more of Meet the Robinsons, and more of Zootopia? All three films that have incredible world building opportunities. Like the opportunities with these three films alone are endless, and Disney has fail to milk them for all that they're worth, like they have for some of these other franchises. And it frustrates me to no end. And I understand that Treasure Planet and Meet the Robinsons were flops in their day, but surely Disney has enough of this to recognize that those of us who loved those films have grown up and would absolutely show up for sequels or spin-offs or shows that are based off of these movies, because they were absolutely brilliant. They were so underappreciated at the time, and they deserve to be further explored because the world building in both of those films was immaculate. The possibilities are literally endless, and Disney fails to explore them. How annoying. But now here we have Zootopia. Which I think, like I said, the possibilities are endless with this one as well. I am so excited for this sequel. Like, I love the first Zootopia movie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And like I said, one of the greatest mysteries of life / Disney Studios is them failing to really see the potential of what Zootopia could do for them. Like, forget Frozen. Frozen, to me, like, the story's already been told. Like, what more do you want to add? What more can you do? What more can you do? But Zootopia, like where do you end? Like, literally, it's ripe for the taking. And lastly, out of the Disney sequels is one that I once again almost forgot. And it's the one that's coming up right around the corner. It's Moana 2. I don't think I've talked about Moana 2 yet on this channel, but this is a perfect occasion to do so. Yeah, hi, I'm Jean, and I'm very nervous about this one. I'm very nervous about, I'm scared. And the reason why I'm scared is because this film was basically made for Disney Plus. It was supposed to be a straight to Disney Plus situation. But because Disney blinked after getting, several flops in the box office, now it's going to be thrust on the big screens in November 2024. And from what I've seen, I'm not sure if it is big screen worthy. Is this actually a film that deserves a theatrical release, that was designed to have a theatrical release and be the big return of Moana, which has become one of the strongest and most powerful brands that Disney have over in Disney animation? Or was this just a desperate attempt to get some sort of recognizable IP on the big screen after their original projects flopped over the last few years? Like, I genuinely think the best case scenario is that it's a mixture of both, but something's telling me that it's more of the latter rather than the former, and that's why I'm scared. That's why I'm really scared, because I love Moana. I think it's a phenomenal film that deserves a really strong sequel to follow up on it. And even though I don't have the most faith in Disney sequels, I do think there's a chance that we could get a good one with Moana, especially if it was really well thought out and designed to be a theatrical release from inception, which is not the case for this one. I have even seen a decline in the quality of animation, which makes me nervous. And also, it certainly doesn't help that Lin-Manuel Miranda is not returning to do the music for this film. Like, that to me is just, because he's been too busy working on Mufasa. More on that in a second. He's been too busy working on Mufasa, so he won't be returning to do the score for Moana. And that just is, why would you proceed with that? Like, I would literally delay the film and get Lin-Manuel Miranda in the studio ASAP rather than just releasing it without his input. Like, that to me sounds like a disaster for me personally. So it's bad enough that they're working on a live action version of Moana, which isn't necessary, which absolutely is not needed. But now they've kind of half-assed the actual sequel to the animated film, and that is really stressing me out as well. Okay, so speaking of live action remakes, of course we can expect a whole bunch coming up from Disney. And out of the presentations that they had in D23, the ones that they really focused on was Snow White, for which we got a first official trailer. I did not watch the trailer for very long. I started watching it and I was like, that's enough. Snow White has never been one of my favorite animated films to begin with, and so this live action version is just like, it's already climbing uphill in my opinion. But then you have the added problems of the cast members and their acting ability / political views, and also the Seven Dwarves, which is just like such a nightmare and headache of a situation. You have Peter Dinklage's comments on the Seven Dwarfs, the fact that he wasn't happy with little people portraying these characters. He said that little people deserved, you know, bigger and better and more diverse kinds of roles, which I agree with. But people in the community were really annoyed with him as well, because Disney very quickly pulled the opportunities from them and instead created these CGI abominations, which we have to look at for about an hour and a half. Yay, can't wait for that. So it's been such a messy situation for Snow White. I actually think this is one of those films that could have been quietly and happily kept in the archives, you know, as an animated classic that started this all. Like, we really did not need this to be made into live action, especially not in this like new wave of live action that they've been doing since Alice in Wonderland. Like, I liked it in Once Upon a Time, the series. I liked that take on Snow White, but this kind of faithful adaptation to the animated film is just a bit spooky. It's just a bit eerie to me. So I think they've made a mess of things for no apparent reason. There's plenty of other Disney animated classics that I would like to see be made live action. Treasure Planet and Meet the Robinsons being two, but no, let's go for Snow White because it has a more recognizable IP, whatever. So let's see. I think they're digging themselves an unnecessary ditch, but we shall see in March. Honestly, the only thing that I'm really excited about when it comes to this film is Rachel Zegler, who is an amazing singer, and I think she's going to kill it in this role, even with that ridiculous bob on her head. Now, the other live action remake that got a spotlight during this presentation was, of course, Mufasa, which is due to come out even earlier than Snow White in December 2024. And here we got a better deep dive into the story, where it turns out that Mufasa was adopted by Scar's family. Listen. I disagree with it. This is retconning. Like, this isn't even the story that we got in the original Lion King. And that Lion King is very fresh on my mind because I recently rewatched it in the most spectacular way as part of their 30th anniversary celebrations in the Royal Albert Hall with a live orchestra. Like, it was a whole thing. I'll tell you more about it in my end of year reviews. But it was an amazing experience. However, that does also mean that the story is fresh on my mind. And so I know for a fact that Scar said that whilst he got the brains from the family, it was Mufasa who got the brawn from the gene pool. He said that. He said the word gene pool. Now, he might have been speaking metaphorically or whatever, but why would he be? Like, there was a general understanding that Mufasa was biologically related to Scar, but now they're saying that Mufasa was adopted, and like, where is this coming? Like, don't piss me off. The Lion King is literally one of the greatest films ever made, so like, please tread carefully when you're retconning nonsense, when you're literally introducing nonsense into the lore, because like, it will not be appreciated. So the only way that I can accept this is if I just divorce it from the original animated film and just have this be the prequel to the live action remake that we got in 2019. Like, that's the only way to go about it. And I actually didn't mind that live action remake. I thought it was decent. I do have a review of it, like, again, back in the day, but overall I think I was much less harsh on the remake than many people were. But I do agree with this like National Geographic like observation. Like, it's just really weird. I don't think that this medium lends itself to this kind of storytelling, and I'd be way more interested in seeing this story play out in 2D animation than this weird like live action 3D animation, which is literally just an animated film in a different kind of artistic style, but whatever. So yeah, that complaint still remains from what I've seen in Mufasa, but I am interested to see how Barry Jenkins, one of the greatest directors of all time, Barry Jenkins, will tackle this story. So far, I'm not loving the changes to the story. I'm not liking this retconning, but if I just think of this as the prequel to the live action movie and not the original animation, then maybe it'll be easier for me to digest. Like, maybe. We'll see. Oh, and speaking of Lin-Manuel Miranda, like I said, he was busy doing this instead of Moana 2 because Moana 2 wasn't originally planned to be theatrically released. And so all of his energy went onto this one. So at the very least, we should be getting some bangers. At the very least, we should be getting some good music. And that does, in fact, make me happy. Yes, it does. Although I will say, so far from what we've seen from the trailer, there seems to be a clash of tones. And I'm not sure if they mesh together well. Like, there are times where they have some comedic beats, which of course aren't sold because of the weird uncanny valley situation, but then there's also like a lot of seriousness. So I wonder how Barry Jenkins has balanced it. From what I saw in the trailer, it looks a bit iffy, but we shall see how all of this package comes together in December. And finally, from the live action remake kings over at Disney, we finally got our first proper look at the live action Stitch from the Lilo and Stitch movie that will be coming up in, is it 2025 or 2026? I think it might be 6, right? But he looks okay. Bear in mind that Stitch was created by the same guy that also created Toothless over in the How to Train Your Dragon camp in DreamWorks. And both of these creatures are going to be coming to live action in the next couple of years. So I wonder how that will turn out. Okay, I don't know which one is first, but like very curious to see how that will look. But as far as Stitch goes, I think the one thing that they do have down is the mischief, right? Like the mischief of the character, his adorableness, his lovableness. I think they have that down pat. And he also has like an edge to him. Like he's kind of evil. Like like he kind of wants to see the world burn. Like, and I love that about Stitch. So like, I'm a huge fan of Stitch. My expectations are sky high. So like, I really want this to work out. So far, from the little clip that we saw, the little intro that he got where he was bursting into the scene, like it looks decent. Like I'm choosing to be optimistic. And also I have higher hopes for Lilo and Stitch than the Lion King franchise because he's a 3D animated character that will be existing in the context of the real world with a live action Lilo. And I think that tends to work a bit better. I mean, we've seen many films of this nature before that work pretty well. So I think it's easier when you have one unreal thing in the real world versus everything being unreal, because then those emotions really can't be conveyed through these animated characters. Okay, so that's it when it comes to all of the live action remakes that were highlighted during the D23 panel. We didn't get anything on Hercules, notably, although they did announce a stage musical, but that doesn't have anything to do with the live action remake that we're set to get from Guy Ritchie. So perhaps we'll see more from that in the future D23. But until then, that's all that we've gotten, and then we'll slowly run through some of the regular live action shows and movies. We did get a sneak peek into the behind the scenes of Wizards Beyond Waverly Place, I was going to say of Waverly Place, with Selena Gomez returning. I was a fan of Wizard of Waverly Place when it was on Disney Channel, but it was a little bit like just on the cusp of me being a little bit too old for Disney Channel. So I wasn't as into Wizards of Waverly Place as I was like Hannah Montana or That's So Raven or Lizzie McGuire or Sweet Life. Like that was my like sweet spot for Disney Channel, the Disney Channel Renaissance. Whereas Wizards of Waverly Place was still in like the latter half of the Renaissance, but it wasn't like my fave. So I'm excited for the girlies who did love Wizards of Waverly Place, but I probably won't be tuning in. Maybe for a cheeky little pilot, we'll see. And then they also gave us a sneak peek into the second season of Percy Jackson, which much like the second movie from the film franchise will also be called Sea of Monsters after the book. And even though I had issues with the first season of Percy Jackson, I am still curious and looking forward to seeing what they do with the second season. I hope they learn the lessons from the first season and really amp things up, because there were definitely issues there, but I think they have great potential with this cast and of course with the great story to do something really great here. So yeah, really hoping for the best for this cast and crew, and I hope at the very least they manage to achieve what the film franchise failed to do in giving us a really good live action adaptation of Sea of Monsters. And finally, it all ends with Avatar. It all ends with Avatar because James Cameron announced that the third movie of this multi-billion-dollar franchise will be called Avatar: Fire and Ash. Now, people have already made many a joke about the fact that this Avatar franchise, James Cameron's franchise, is basically the same thing as like Avatar, like the animation and now live action series on Netflix. It's the same thing. It explores all of the elements, like it is the same thing. So we've already done land and we've already done water, and so here comes fire. Now, so far when it comes to the story and the world building and the imagination and the characters and the themes and the writing and everything else, the series has this movie franchise beat down pat, like without question. However, if there's one thing that no one can beat the movie franchise on, it's the advancements in technology. It's the use of CGI. It's the brilliant use of technology to bring the world of Pandora to life. That will always be Avatar's great calling card. That's what will keep me going to see these movies in IMAX. So like, he absolutely has that going for him. So that's it from me, guys. Oh my god, I had so much to get through. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on the announcements from the entertainment panel of D23, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of these announcements down in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are you excited about? Let me know. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.